Okay, so now we're going to be looking at stress. Stress is about making certain syllables stand out, and it's a tool that many languages around the world use. Generally, putting stress on a syllable means putting more articulatory effort into it. The syllable becomes longer, louder, higher pitched, and generally more distinct. What does that mean, more distinct? Well, if you consider English vowels, in unstressed syllables, the tongue often moves toward a neutral mid-central position. That's vowel reduction, and it leaves us with schwas all over the place. And stressed syllables, the vowels stay more distinct. They stay towards the edge where things are easier to tell apart. Or you can consider tapping. When an alveolar plosive, in at least Canadian English, is between two vowels, and when the second one is unstressed, that is, the T or the D is in the onset of an unstressed syllable, then it gets reduced from a full plosive, which has its closure and release, to a tap, just tap and go. Um, we can see these differences play out. These differences between stressed and unstressed play out most clearly in certain English pairs of words where stress shift signals the difference between nouns and verbs, and sometimes that's almost the only difference. So we have pairs like record and record, object and object, and so on. So we're going to have a look at some waveforms here uh, for the word present and present, where the so that's what we're going to be looking at. Let's jump in here. Now this is a little small, but you can see it bigger in the accompanying notes. In the noun present on the left, you see the stressed vowel, the in present. First vowel is longer, second vowel is shorter. But in present, the first vowel is shorter, second vowel is longer. So that's duration. You also notice higher amplitude for the stressed than the unstressed in both cases, right? First one stressed, that's higher. Second one stressed, that's higher. All right, and you see the durations marked out there as well. Okay, and now when we look at the pitch track, we see similar differences. Here we see the stressed first syllable has this big F0 range, and then the second example, present, where it's unstressed, it just has a smaller F0 range. And then if we move to the second syllable, where it's unstressed, it has that small range, just like the first syllable in the other one. And when it's stressed, it has this rise and fall over. And you can see how the time element here plays a role as well, letting more stuff happen with the pitch. Now, there's uh, more stuff here. Um, it's important to keep in mind that the way stress affects the pitch contour, it can vary in a lot of ways. Sometimes it's a drop in pitch rather than a rise. So you sometimes find this in questions. Did you get them a present? So you actually dip down to put that sort of mark that syllable with the pitch. And the vowel quality varies too. Um, in English, it's pretty extreme, with a lot of vowels really becoming that mid-central schwa when unstressed. In other languages, it's just a little bit of movement towards the center. And the contribution of these three cues, the pitch, duration, amplitude, sorry, these four cues, pitch, duration, amplitude, and vowel quality, can vary from language to language and from situation to situation. What remains the same is that stress employs multiple acoustic cues to mark one syllable as more prominent than its neighbors. Now, the IPA gives us two markers to indicate stress. Primary stress is marked with a high tick before the first sound of the stressed syllable, as in the noun present and the verb present that you see there, right? You see that high tick mark before the P in present and before the Z character in present. In longer words, there's often a second level of stress known as secondary stress on on certain syllables that aren't as prominent as the primary stress syllable, but they're more stressed, more prominent than the completely unstressed syllables. And this secondary stress is indicated with a low tick mark, as in the first syllable of phonetician, right? So phonetician, the t, that third syllable is definitely primarily stressed, but in the phone part, the fo is more stressed than the n. So we have two syllables with schwas, the second and the fourth. The other syllables, the first and third, are stressed. Secondary stress on the first one, primary stress on the third. So you see the high tick and the low tick. Okay. And finally, languages vary in where they put stress. Languages like Turkish and Czech, for example, like to stress the first syllable of a word fairly reliably. There's always some exceptions. Spanish prefers to stress the second last syllable. Some languages are really strict with this pattern, while others, like English, are loaded with exceptions, even if there is a general tendency. Some of those exceptions may be predictable, like the noun verb pairs we just talked about, predictable by grammatical role, for example, and others aren't. For example, the noun garage has stress on the second syllable, while the verb pamper has stress on the first syllable in English. So exceptions to the exceptions, exceptions to the patterns. Stress can also move based on morphology. So, for example, in English, Canada, the noun, has stress on the first syllable, but when we add the suffix to make it into an adjective, Canadian, the stress moves to the second syllable. So you can look at the textbook and elsewhere for other subtleties like stress timed versus syllable timed languages. I'm going to be putting off discussion of pitch accents and nuclear accents for the video where we talk about tone and intonation. But that's a good overview of stress. Whole category of languages, whole lot of languages that use stress as a suprasegmental property in their words. So I hope this video hasn't been too stressful. Oh, that's terrible. How could I even do that? Let's end the video.